Welcome to Preparing for AI, the AI podcast for everybody, with your hosts Jimmy Rhodes and me, Matt Cartwright. We explore the human and social impacts of AI, looking at the impact on jobs, AI and sustainability, and most importantly, the urgent need for safe development of AI, governance and alignment.
Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you got to do is just meet me at the Welcome to Preparing for AI, the AI podcast for everybody, with me, Barry Venison.
And me, Alan Lamb.
And we're back with our most popular series, the monthly roundup. So we're going to get straight off with it. So I'm going to hand over to Jimmy to start off with our first item, which is going to be examples of actual useful AIs.
Yeah, so I came up with this because, obviously we did an episode on this not that long ago, but we focused on large language models, I feel. I've been getting quite a lot of advertisements for AI products, and I feel like this is a relatively new thing. Now, I appreciate I do a lot of AI-related searches on Google, so I'm obviously going to get AI products placement stuff. But I also haven't seen it that much in the past. You know, it's usually just BetterHelp and stuff like that. Which I'm obviously greatly in need of as well. But yeah, so I've been getting adverts specifically for Google Workspace and for what's the other one? 11 Labs, which we did talk
Jimmy,
about.
you run an AI podcast. Do you understand how algorithms work?
I do, but I feel like so what I'm trying to say is I feel like we're getting to the point now where rather than kind of unpolished alpha versions of
novel
stuff,
we're novel stuff, frivolous stuff.
We're actually starting to get to the point where companies are releasing sort of finished products, and therefore they've started advertising them on YouTube, Google, that kind of thing. And I think 11 Labs is a really good example. So 11 Labs, I would put this in definitely in the category of business application. You can use it for personal use, but it's more for fun. But very much like we did an interview with Cerberus not long ago, with 11 Labs now, they have conversational AI, which is like just been added like within the last couple of weeks. And this is like a bit of a game changer in my opinion. So just to go back a bit to explain, 11 Labs as a company, they focus on AI voice to text and text to voice. So basically it's a website where you can clone your own voice. You can select from a range of pre-made voices, so to speak. You can get them to do text to speech, and it's really good. Like we're talking like pro level stuff. And you can also do it speech to text. The game changer, as I say, that's just come out in the last couple of weeks is now they've introduced conversational AI. And so I've actually cloned my voice. I've cloned your voice as well. And you can now create within 11 Labs.
Just clarify, when you said that's me. That's not the listener.
That's not the
because everyone listening thinks you've cloned their voice.
I have not cloned any listeners.
All 3,600 of our listeners.
No, disclaimer, I have not cloned anyone's voices that I don't have permission for, although I don't think Matt gave me.
Yeah, you haven't got permission for mine, but I'm going to give it you now.
Well, we've got hours.
I've given it you verbally, and it's recorded on this podcast. So
yeah, I used our hours of quality podcast content to create it. So yeah, look out soon for an episode created like just of AI Jimmy and AI Matt. Because what you can also do, so you can give these conversational AIs, you can give them knowledge. So you give them like documents which build up their knowledge base. So I gave one transcripts from the podcast, for example, and then you can also create a persona for them. And another great use of AI is to use something like Claude or ChatGPT to actually create the system prompt for the model. So this all sort of requires very little effort on my part, to be honest. But yeah, like I've created a few models. I've cloned my own voice. It's quite impressive stuff. And it feels like this is one of those things where, like I say, 11 Labs already have a range of voices, like hundreds of voices available. You can do this professional voice cloning. It feels like this is a consumer grade product for things like call centers. And when I say conversational AI, similar to the Cerberus episode, we're talking about an AI, you can interrupt it. It has like a roughly 200 millisecond response time. You can choose from a range of large language models to use in the background to form responses. So I think it's running through several AIs, and you've got one that's doing the voice to text when you talk. you've got another one doing text to voice when it talks back, and obviously it's running off some kind of large language model in the background to decide what to say back, and then it's using your system prompt. So it's a whole bunch of stuff coming together. It's really quite impressive in my opinion.
There's another example I have, which we talked about a while ago, and when we talked about it, we said it was rubbish, but we could foresee, where it was going to get to, and I think it's now kind of at that point, is HeyGen. So HeyGen it creates a kind of avatar. So originally when we tried using it, I think there were maybe one or maybe 3 or 4 different avatars you could use, and it will then, so you put in text and the avatar will then do the speech. It was a bit clunky, like there was arms kind of moving. It's not perfect now, but you can now get a picture and it will create the avatar from that picture. But this really surprised me because I thought a lot of blocks would be in place to stop this kind of thing. But you could take a photo from your photo library and it would create an avatar with that. I don't know. There's obviously, watermarks and stuff. There's obviously some security stuff in there. But it's already evolved to a place where there's a lot of flexibility and creativity in what you can do. And the idea that when I first saw it marketed was quite a commercial use, was, creating marketing videos and stuff like that, which I think it would be great for. There's obviously the deep fake, the potential for deep fakes. Like I say, I haven't actually used the newest version, but I'm 100% certain that there will be things in that are to stop abuse of it at the moment, whether people can hack in and use it in I'm sure there are uses that you could use it for which are obviously dodgy or not intended for, but I think it's an example very much like 11 Labs of something that has now kind of reached a point where it looks like it's becoming. They had to release it early on to get it ahead in the market, I guess. 1, for investment, 2, because you need to be the kind of you need to be the first early adopters. You need to see the first one to kind of jump on that bandwagon. But I do think it's now at the point where, it looks like it's legit and it looks like it's kind of something that you can actually use professionally now, which is 6 months ago, such a short time, but we were not in that space. But that's the sort of example I had. So I agree with you. We're getting to the point where these things are no longer necessarily kind of frivolous uses. They're finding some actual uses, which they need, because otherwise they're not going to make any money out of them.
Yeah, there's so many business cases for the stuff we're talking about. So educational training videos, like, professional training videos at work is a good example. The conversational AI opens up a whole world. Like you're 11 Labs are definitely going to make a load of money off call centers and any kind of business where you need to have customer interactions, because this is like the next generation of that industry, where you've got, you phone up your bank and initially you're speaking to, the weird thing is, I don't know if this has already happened, but you could easily be speaking to one of these agents and not realize you're not speaking to a person. I think we'll get used to it, and I think you'll sort of be able to pick out some of the idiosyncrasies and stuff like that. But they're so good that I think it'll be difficult. One thing I would say on the sort of it's not copyright, but like kind of like not copying people's voices that you don't have the permission to, and not copying people's images. I think these platforms are touting themselves as just that, as a platform. 11 Labs definitely has disclaimers that says you need to have permission to use this voice and clone this voice and that kind of thing when you're talking about voice cloning. I'm assuming that HeyGen has very similar terms and conditions. So if you get caught, cloning Trump's voice or something like that, then you're probably going to get like kicked off the platform at some point. But I think they are very much trying to go down the road of, we're a platform, we're not necessarily responsible for what people create with our platform. Let's see how that goes. But
it's interesting, isn't it, how we're at the point where it feels like large language models are plateauing. And I was going to talk about it on this episode. I thought, it's something we've talked about before, so maybe not, but there's more and more evidence of the kind of plateauing in large language models and the need to try and find something else to kind of make the next breakthrough. But at the same time as that's happening, that shouldn't distract from the fact that, like you say, there are now these really amazing use cases, because the idea in the large language models is, to get to artificial general intelligence. Well, actually, for useful things, we don't need that. You could probably argue we don't need, we certainly don't need artificial super intelligence, but you could argue we don't need artificial general intelligence, and that there's all of those kind of potential negatives and the kind of existential and systemic threats that are there. They're not there with large language models. There are threats, but there are also like genuinely really good use cases, and they're starting to come through now, which means I think next year maybe we'll start to see a lot more adoption in sort of enterprise and jobs. But I think as well, I feel at this point that it is currently going to work hand in hand with people. Like the call center example is maybe not a good one, but there's a lot of things where, there isn't enough trust. They're not 100%. There's going to still be people in the chain. You are going to see productivity gains. Longer term, I'm not so confident, but shorter term, I think next year we might see, genuinely sort of progress and improvements in productivity that are not necessarily at the loss of, massive job cuts. Some people are going to lose their jobs, but it might not be as much as we maybe feared 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Yeah, I feel like, so in this respect, I still think with call centers, these 11 Labs type AIs, they're still not going to be perfect. They're not going to answer every question. So you're still going to need humans.
Neither someone in a call center going to be able to answer every question. So that's the thing of working together, isn't it? Some things the AI is good for, some things needs the person.
Yeah, but presumably the way these things will work is, okay, I need to speak to a human now, and then actually you'll go through to a human. But presumably these AIs are going to be able to answer, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of questions.
The human will just be a different AI that someone believes they've gone through the AI and they've now gone to the human, but it's just it's like version 2.0 of the same avatar.
But I think the web is we've talked about it before. The web, I think, is a really good analogy for this. Obviously, we're on a massively accelerated timescale compared to the web, but the World Wide Web, in terms of the platform, actually existed like in the 70s, and the first real version of the actual World Wide Web from the 1980s, and it took until late 90s, early 2000s to have real kind of business applications for it. I think we're on a massively accelerated time frame compared to that with AI because of the experience that we've gone through with the web before. But we've talked about it before on the podcast. Despite the fact you're right, like AI, like LLMs, in terms of their plateauing, in terms of how smart they're going to get, is definitely happening. However, now we're starting to see these business applications.
Okay, the next one is it's something called, I've called it Artists Against AI. So it's particularly a group which call themselves PR puppets, who kind of say that they were lured into providing unpaid labour through bug testing, feedback and experimental work. They've called out OpenAI for having complete control over what's presented to the public in terms of kind of Sora and creative tools. So saying that this early access program that they were working on appears to be less about creative expression and critique and more about PR and advertising. And then this group, who obviously have got a kind of issue with the way that, so basically the issues with the way that, training data and people's work is then being used for free on these kind of creative models. They somehow leaked Sora. So Sora is OpenAI's video creation tool, which still hasn't properly been released. So I think it was about 3 hours, but everyone could apparently access that model for 3 hours before it was shut down by OpenAI. It also seems that the videos generated during that time have been taken down off Hugging Face, which is kind of, it's the best way to use it, is kind of like the server where you would be able to find it. And the group have called to stop using proprietary tools like Sora and for people to use open source projects instead. So they're not asking people to not use AI, but they're asking them to not support OpenAI, which, something I can get behind, to be honest. They express support for using AI tools to create art, but they oppose gatekeeping or basically being kind of PR and, training corporations that are then going to make loads of money out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in two minds on this one. Like, I think the problem is everyone put their data on the internet, and we've been doing this for years, right? Like, everyone's been putting their art, everything they produce, been making it freely available on the internet.
On platforms as well, particularly, right?
Yeah, on platforms where you sign up to terms and conditions which basically say we can sell your data and do what we want with it. And, there are different versions of that, but effectively the sort of cat's out of the bag, really, in a way. And I feel like on the one hand, you probably haven't got a leg to stand on, but on the other hand, no one knew what commercial applications this stuff was going to be used for in the future. I mean, interestingly, I don't know whether the same groups of people are upset that Google's using their data for advertising purposes and all this kind of stuff. Very possibly, but I genuinely feel like the cat was out of the bag with the internet and with, providing Google, Facebook, all these big tech companies with all of your information and data freely. And then effectively all they've done is used it exactly as they said they were going to.
I don't disagree with you. My reason for bringing this one up as a point of sort of, one of my monthly most interesting things this month is less about that actually, but it's about the fact that I see this as a backlash. And I've talked from the very first episode about what I foresee. I mean, it was in my predictions about the backlash, and I've talked about riots on the streets and stuff, which I still think if things go badly in terms of jobs and stuff will happen. But this, although on a minor scale, I mean, I guess you could compare it to the kind of Just Stop Oil, right? Throwing some paint over a painting. In the kind of impact. I mean, it's not, it's a few hours and it's not that much of an impact, but for me, it just shows that, artists and creatives are starting to really feel not just that they're angry about this, but that they want to do something. And it always, that kind of protest and stuff, it always or often starts in kind of artistic communities. Those are the people that have, they can think about expression, they care about these things. So I just think it's really interesting that this has started. And when we're kind of talking about the positive use cases, but actually, and a lot of the surveys, like what people are most worried about AI or most bothered about at the moment is about the use of their data. So it stands to reason that this would be the first thing that, well, it's not the first thing. I mean, we've had things on driverless cars and stuff, but this is the first example I've seen for a while of a kind of backlash and against a, what is essentially a large language model powered tool. So we're starting to see small level backlash protests. I don't think this is going to, move the needle much either way, but I think it's interesting that people are starting to actually do something. They're not just saying it, they're actually starting to sort of, not with their feet, but I was going to say, I guess with their hands or with their brains, they're actually starting to act and they're actually starting to try and, do something to kick back against it.
Yeah. And I feel we've said this before. I feel like artists that produce unique pieces of art, like your Banksys and Van Gogh type figures, they probably don't have anything to worry about because like high level art is still going to be valued.
Possibly more so if there are less artists because it will be more unique. It's just no one will have any money to buy it.
Yeah, totally.
Well, some people will. The richest 1%, they'll be buying all the art.
Yeah, will probably be it'll be the robots.
From now, is it?
It'll be the robots in the future.
Yeah, it's not like me and you can buy Van Goghs now and we won't be able to in the future.
Well, speak for yourself. I've got a few tucked away. But I think this actually, when we talk about artists, obviously there's a huge community of artists that are not the kind of 1%. They're actually graphic designers, people like that. And with that, like it's actually, it is actually quite sad that, because quite often people go into a lot of careers because they're passionate about it, but especially in that kind of design and art space, and now those kind of jobs, I'd imagine they're like seriously under threat. We've already had episodes where we've talked about people who've lost their jobs who work in those industries. So yeah, in that respect, it's quite sad that now you can churn out commercial art as quick as you like. So what have you got next for us, Matt?
I think this is a good one. It's a controversial one. I think it's a good one. The AI Jesus. So the AI Jesus, I don't know if you've heard, well, you have heard about this because I told you before the podcast, but for people online, I don't know if you've heard about this.
It's quite the intro.
It is, yeah. This is what's been called an innovative art installation at St. Peter's Chapel in Lucerne. I think I pronounced that correctly. Lucerne in Switzerland.
I think it's Lucerne.
Yeah, okay. Should we go back? At St. Peter's Chapel in Lucerne, Switzerland, which was designed to explore the intersection of technology and spirituality. Developed in collaboration with the Immersive Realities Research Lab at Lucerne University, this project features a holographic representation of Jesus that interacts with visitors responding to questions about faith and the Bible in any one of 100 languages.
Yeah. Is it 11 labs?
Possibly. Like I'll be honest with you. I find this weird, and from a kind of theological point of view, I find it a little bit troubling, because I think this idea of using AI to kind of impersonate Jesus, I'm not particularly comfortable with it. I think it's also weird because it's basically in a kind of confession situation. So people go in, and the article was talking about how you've got Christians, you've got Muslims, you've got Jews, you've got atheists, all kinds of different people going in and using it. So I guess people are using it for fun. But the idea that, you go to confession, you confess to a priest, or you confess in your own time perhaps to Jesus, but you don't go into a physical space to confess to Jesus. It's a gimmick.
They've clearly chosen the title to be inflammatory.
Well, you haven't, people haven't heard the title yet, have they? So do you want to read it out?
Is it not
Jimmy?
called AI Jesus?
No, the installation is called Deus in Machina.
You mean Juice in Machine?
I mean Deus in Machina.
Yeah, Deus in Machina,
Yeah.
What's it doing?
Well, it's provoking thought about the role of AI in religious context, Jimmy. Although it is situated in a confessional booth, as we said, but it is important to note that the AI does not hear confessions, which I don't understand because it's literally listening to people's confessions, or replace a priest, which is literally what it is doing, but rather it facilitates conversations for spiritual reflection. Well, that I can get behind. Because I said on the top 10 uses, like I had a very kind of spiritual conversation with an AI, which was really useful. But that's why I think this is a bit odd. And it's obviously gimmicky. So it's been trained on the New Testament and various theological texts, so it can provide responses that are aligned with church teachings.
Definitely should have gone Old Testament all the way.
Well, I'm surprised it wasn't trained on all of it. I mean, it's not, if you think about the kind of context windows, I'm sure you could train one on the Old and New Testaments.
Probably. I think if it's using ChatGPT in the background, I think ChatGPT wouldn't fit with the guardrails, probably. The Old Testament's pretty brutal.
Yes, it is. Like I say, I think the thing itself is interesting. It's obviously a gimmick. I mean, it's obviously not there to replace sort of confession, but I think the reason it's a gimmick is because they're using Jesus. Like I say, from a kind of purely theological Christian point of view, I think it's slightly troubling. From the point of view of having AI that people can go to and, be spiritual and have those conversations. Yeah, I think it's probably a good thing if it would encourage more people to find spirituality, to find some kind of peace, to find God. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I think the idea of them using Jesus rather than it just being a kind of AI confession booth or a spiritual conversation, that's the bit where I think not only is it kind of gimmicky, but it does, I think it would be challenging, I think, for a lot of people of faith. And if we had an AI version of other religious figures, I'm not going to mention, but I think there are particular regions where would have a real problem with that kind of impersonation, and it absolutely would not be okay to do it. So it's interesting, but it's like anything that is going to interfere with religion. I think it's very controversial, and sort of AI and religion, something we talked very briefly about, but I think it's something to watch, because I think where those two intersect will be incredibly controversial.
Has this been done in collaboration with the Catholic Church, though? Like, I get the impression it has.
No, I don't think it has.
Oh, you don't think it has?
From what I read, it hasn't, and I can't see. I mean, the Catholic Church has many, like any church, has many levels. It obviously had worked with the particular chapel in Lucerne because
that's what I meant.
They'd agreed for it to be there, but I can't imagine the Catholic Church as an institution allowing it.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Pope signed it off or something.
Well, yeah, and is it like an AI Pope? Obviously, wouldn't be okay. No. An AI Jesus would absolutely not be okay with the kind of any churches, I think. Not
in those terms. I mean, what I was going to say is if it is in any way sort of in collaboration with the church, even if it's not the central body, then it's also really progressive and pretty cool. Like, I still think a significant amount of people don't really know what AI is all about. That's why we have our podcast. And, this is pretty cool. I bet a bunch of people will have seen this and interacted with it and been quite awed by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'm going to refer back to that on the sort of top 10 users episode where I talked about it's not the same thing, but having a kind of spiritual conversation, talking through sort of spiritual and religious things with an AI, and it was able to kind of listen and actually, I said it quoted back to me kind of, oh yeah, this sounds like something from a particular Bible passage. I think that's pretty cool. Where I think this kind of crosses a line, like I said, is the idea of an AI Jesus. So if you have a look at it, there's actually a kind of hologram of Jesus. And like I say, you don't go and do confession with Jesus in a Catholic church. Now you can have your own moment where you talk to Jesus wherever you want, in a church, at home, in whatever environment you want to. But this idea of the confession thing is, if it was an AI priest, I think it would be not only not controversial, but would also be, it's definitely a really good thing, because it does encourage more people to be spiritual. It's able to kind of give feedback. But I think it's that idea of using Jesus rather than using a priest that I think, like I said, you can only imagine if certain other religions were to do the same. Obviously that couldn't happen. I find it a bit odd that even this chapel has kind of allowed this with Jesus, but that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, totally.
Right, well, you often make fun of me, Jimmy, when I do my kind of governance and alignment stuff. So I'm going to let you take this on. I'm going to lie down, have a nap, and if you can wake me up when you've finished, I'll join back with the podcast. Yeah,
so very exciting stuff. We've got the economics of AI. So what I was going to talk about, like a couple of months ago, actually, it's not this month, but a couple of months ago, OpenAI raised, I think it was another 6.6 billion from Microsoft, and they've now got a valuation. It's absolutely bonkers. It's like 157 billion, sorry. And just to put it in context, like some of the fastest growing companies in recent history, like Google and Facebook, OpenAI is now actually outstripping the growth that they had when they first set up, and they were already like record breaking at the time in terms of their valuations. And again, bear in mind, OpenAI is not a publicly listed company, which unfortunately means you can't benefit from their kind of like, I think 1700% increase between January 2023 and August 2023, and it's increased again since then, because I think their valuation's gone up another 4 or 5 times since then. And so like into like the exponential kind of valuation of OpenAI is absolutely crazy. As I say, now worth, in theory, 157 billion, based on a company that actually is 49% owned by Microsoft, but the rest of it is actually owned and governed by a still not-for-profit board, basically, under the wise helmsmanship of Sam Altman.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show. But yeah, like, so, and this company, like, they're valued at this crazy valuation. They reckon they make about 10 billion at the moment in revenue every year through their like $20 a month subscriptions.
And lose 300 trillion.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. It's
just because when you said that, like, just in case people haven't kind of put it together, is like they're obviously generating revenue, but the amount of money they're spending is like, I don't know how many X of what they're generating at the moment.
Well, absolutely. Hence needing to raise this amount of capital, where they're worth 157 billion on paper, but they're making about 10 billion in revenue a year. So, if they did nothing else, it'd take them 15 years to get back to zero again. So yeah, I don't know how much money they're spending, but it's crazy amounts of money, training models, developing new models, all that kind of stuff. Now, that being said, the reason why all this money is going into AI is because it's such a potential game changer. It's seen as something that can actually revolutionize almost everything, right? So like revolutionize search, which Google is still dominant in. And then also revolutionize businesses in terms of being able to automate tasks, being able to like write emails, being able to, automate a whole bunch of stuff that people do right now. One of the cool things about this is that in the last couple of weeks, actually, so Anthropic is another company that we talk about quite often on the show, and actually they've got a surprising amount of cash behind them. So they've been backed by Amazon. So clearly you've got Microsoft, OpenAI on one side. You've got Amazon.
So Claude really are, Anthropic really are the good guys, right?
Yeah,
the little guys, the little train that could, with little Amazon supporting them in the background.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, Claude, we talk about Claude a lot, talk about
and it is brilliant.
Anthropic, and it is fantastic. Feels much more natural to use. But actually they're not really a small fish. They actually have I think Amazon's doubled down and brought their investment up to 8 billion from 4 billion. And I think that Anthropic are now worth a 40 billion valuation. So even though
it sounds nothing though, does it? It's like the numbers that have been bandied around now, like you're like 40 billion, is that it? And then you think about what 40 billion, you think about, I just remember during the sort of early days of the pandemic talking to somebody who worked for British Airways and them saying, oh, it's okay because they've got $1 billion in cash, so it'll be okay. Obviously they haven't got this money in cash, but $1 billion in cash being like everything will be fine because we've got $1 billion. We're talking in multiples of billions now.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I mean, wasn't Twitter's valuation when Musk bought it? I think it was like 50-something billion, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
something like that.
So
I can't remember exactly, but
yeah. So we're talking about Anthropic here, which is a company that not a lot of people have heard of. I mean, if you listen to our podcast, you'll have heard of them. But outside of like that, like in terms of AI companies that are widely known, I doubt many people have heard of Anthropic. Whereas obviously everybody's heard of Twitter. And they nearly have the same kind of valuation as when Musk bought Twitter. So it just gives you an idea of how much investment is going into these AI companies. And clearly, I mean, Anthropic are a great company and they're making great products. But clearly you've got those...
And are like, we should say, like genuinely, it's not perfect, but are doing more on safety than any of the other major labs. So, they're putting their money where their mouth is in terms of what they say that they're trying to be. It's not perfect, but unlike OpenAI, for example, like they're trying to do this in a reasonably kind of ethical way.
I think so. Yeah, definitely agree on that. There, Anthropic are big on ethics, and that's partly because the people who formed Anthropic broke away from OpenAI for exactly that reason, pretty much. So yeah, it's just super interesting. Obviously, you've got Google Gemini, you've got Meta, who are taking a completely different approach and producing open source models, which they're just completely open sourcing. And I think, like, actually, in terms of the approach, it's kind of a really interesting approach because we've talked about open source and closed source on the podcast before, but I think because the capabilities of these large language models is plateauing, actually, like, where's all that money going that OpenAI are chucking at things? And so I don't know, like, I really wonder whether they're just chucking cash down the toilet, and if they don't get those killer business applications. Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest. I think the money that's being thrown at it is on the basis that they're going to get to artificial general intelligence, because the commercial uses of it doesn't need to have, like, that's the thing, is if you get there first. Right? If you get there first, then you've got there first, and you can never kind of take that away. I think with the business uses you're talking about, most of the things that you're talking about, it won't really matter which model is in the background, right?
No.
Whether it's a Llama model, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's Mistral, one of the Chinese models, QM from Alibaba, I don't think it will matter that much because it's creating the application. Of course, you need a frontier model. Of course, you need an advanced model, but you don't necessarily need the most advanced one. If you look at, because I read a lot of stuff that Gary Marcus writes about. Gary Marcus is very much, it's plateauing, and his kind of fear, and actually we talked about in the Darren Acemoglu interview about the amount of investment, and if it doesn't pay off, the problem is so much money's been invested in here. The idea is the only way the kind of world economy is going to be saved. Maybe it doesn't need saving. Maybe it needs to crash and we can rebuild a slightly different world. But, if it is going to be saved and we're going to go back to growth, is like all the chips are in on this. So it doesn't necessarily have
all
to
the
be
chips are in on it.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be
like a wild poker game.
Exactly, and it needs to pay off. And I don't know. I feel like it's a hell of a lot of money to be putting in on one company. It's not the idea; it's the fact that it's going to be OpenAI, and the gap. everyone talks about things as it's a GPT-4 model, it's a GPT-5 model. What if someone leaps out ahead and gets out ahead of ChatGPT, and then what? Because once they lose that and they're no longer the kind of market leader, they're just like all the others then.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think part of this is marketing and being first to market. It's a bit like I don't know, Bitcoin or Google or things like that, where it's just like, oh, like I think OpenAI and I think ChatGPT has become synonymous with AI in the same way as Google became with search. So people literally started saying Google it instead of search for it. And I think that's the same thing with OpenAI and ChatGPT, is that ChatGPT, whenever you ask anyone about AI who doesn't really know much about it, ChatGPT or ChatGPT is what a lot of people call it, comes out usually first. And people don't know about Gemini. They don't know about all these other AI products. They don't know that it's integrated into search now, I think. And so that's the kind of advantage they've had as first mover. And I feel like a lot of this valuation stuff is based on that.
But they don't, like, you talk about this a lot, particularly in the last few months, about how it almost sort of doesn't matter, because if you take ChatGPT, and people have got it on their phone, right? So everyone uses ChatGPT, the interface, and a lot of people pay $20 a month. I pay for Claude. I'm not sure if you still pay for Claude, but regardless, we all pay for that kind of thing. They're not making money out of this. That's not how they're making money. This is like pocket money, right? This is just, it might pay for the coffee. It literally keep the lights on. But it's not where the money's going to be generated from. So if we say that, like, where is ChatGPT or OpenAI's advantage in terms of that kind of commercial making money thing? Is it because, and we've talked about this quite a bit, Meta and Google and actually Microsoft, which maybe is the way, but Microsoft are also doing their own thing. They've got the infrastructure. And so it's much, much easier for them. Like, where do OpenAI make their money? I still don't really understand where they're going to make their money. And I'm not saying they won't, but I don't see an easy pathway to it, in a way that if Google cracks it and gets ahead, well, it's simple. Like, then they've got everything. It's all integrated. Same with Meta. Meta are going a different path, because they're saying we don't need to make money out of the AI, because the AI will help us make money out of everything else. So theirs, again, is in many ways is a simpler model. Anthropic and OpenAI need to make it through their large language models. That's more difficult.
Yeah. Personally, I think it's business applications. So OpenAI obviously have a link with Microsoft. I think that, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that Copilot uses OpenAI. And so then all of the sort of revenue from Copilot, which is a business application, which is, that is gonna fly. And I think that's based off OpenAI's models.
Did you know that if OpenAI get artificial general intelligence, then the whole thing's off?
What does the whole
basically
thing...
Microsoft don't get any revenue or
from the AGI stuff?
From the AGI
specifically from the AGI stuff. I find that crazy. I mean, I don't know who signed up to that agreement, but it sounds crazy, because if they, and maybe Microsoft didn't actually believe they'd get to AGI, which is like maybe behind all of this, like we don't, but that's crazy. That's nuts, because that's where that's the golden goose, right?
So Jimmy, you said you want to talk about the Musketeer.
Yeah, here he is again. He's always in the news, isn't he? So Musk, I think, had a lawsuit that he had against OpenAI. He withdrew it in July, only to revive it later in the summer. So I think they've probably had a bit of a rework of the whole thing. Mostly they've named a whole bunch of new defendants, including Microsoft, Hoffman, Templeton, a couple of new plaintiffs, a Neuralink exec who I think annoyed Musk by leaving Neuralink by the sounds of it, and an ex-OpenAI board member, an ex-AI.
I like him more and more. Honestly, I've got to be honest. I didn't think I'd say this, but I do. It's not just because he's taken Sam Altman to court, but I find that I quite like Elon. Maybe we'll just leave it at that.
I used to. I think he's made some...
I didn't used to, but I really do now.
I'm the other way around. Like, the more he gets into politics and getting his opinion out there, and
well, you're not a right-wing nut job conspiracy theorist like me, are you?
Not as far
that's
as
probably
I'm aware.
why.
But then you must be quite self-aware to be saying that, especially on a podcast that's going out to millions. So yeah, Musk. So just to give a bit of background on this, basically Musk was one of the original founders of OpenAI, and when I say founders, like he put a load of cash into it. And in fact, so he's argued that in previous complaints that he's been defrauded out of more than 44 million that he donated to OpenAI by preying on his well-known concerns about the existential harms of AI.
Elon needs that 44 million as well. He can't eat.
I know, he's probably struggling, yeah.
He's earned that money, and then this is not a joke. He's earned that money in the time we've talked about this.
Oh yeah, probably, yeah, in the last 30 seconds, I think so. Just as a bit of background, because people probably don't know about this, but like OpenAI was launched in 2015. It was a non-profit organization. In 2019, it was converted to capped profit. But Musk was one of the like I say, one of the driving forces behind it. Got together with Sam Altman, agreed with all their principles. And originally, the principle behind the company was that it would be driven by a not-for-profit board that was purely about research and wanted to develop safe superintelligence or safe AGI or safe intelligence.
Ilya Sutskevich's company.
Yeah.
Safe superintelligence.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, maybe that's why he started it, because he's trying to fulfill the original mission.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a few people that have broken away from OpenAI for exactly this reason. And
I think literally, apart from Sam Altman, I think all of the originals have all broken away.
Yeah.
I mean, Musk, Sutskever, I can't remember who is it there's a Scandinavian. Anyway, yeah.
It's a shame you can't remember the name.
Well, this is unusual for me, isn't it, to either not remember a name or completely butcher it.
But the Scandinavian, definitely. I know who you're talking about, actually.
Jan something.
Jan something. Yeah. Sorry, Jan. So he's back at it again. I don't know whether he'll win this court case or not, but effectively he's saying that they defrauded him because this was originally supposed to be not-for-profit. It's deviated from its mission statement. It's deviated from its not-for-profit statement. And I'll be honest, I kind of agree with Musk on this. I don't know how it'll work out in the courts.
You agree with him.
Yeah, I do agree with him because at the end of the day, those were it was founded on a set of principles, and it sounds like he literally donated them cash based on the principles that they're talking about, and the company's massively deviated from that since. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully they'll televise it and we can watch it. It'll be like the Depp trial for nerds.
Or Frost versus Nixon.
Thrilling.
Frost versus Nixon was brilliant. And if you haven't watched it, watch the film. Everyone on this, plus you. Have you watched the film?
Is this the documentary?
No, it's a film.
Oh.
It's a film that pretends to be... this sounds like the worst film ever. It's a film that is just the interview and then preparing for the interview. But it's absolutely brilliant. Michael Sheen. It's
I don't think I have seen it. Yeah. I want to add to the list.
No, watch it tonight. It's amazing.
Cool.
Before I do my next one, I have to tell you, at the beginning of the episode, we talked about the algorithm and how it was telling Jimmy about all these sort of commercial uses for AI. And I was saying, well, the algorithm knows you. Jimmy's computer just popped up a chair workout for seniors with a picture of a man with, which I can only say has got stuck on Father Christmas beard and white hair, but the most incredible body you've ever seen.
It looks like a buff Captain Birdseye.
It does, yeah. And for those that have never seen Jimmy, if you go back to last week's episode, we put the video out of it so you can actually have a look at him.
To be fair, I think this dude's got a better body than me, but I'm not sure about the rest of him.
But not the rest of him. Yeah. Well, this is actually the perfect segue, and this was not intended. No, it genuinely is, into my AO medical updates. So in, recognition of my attempts to be more positive about things and to face fear with hope instead of fear with fear, I've decided, as someone who believes that, big pharma and the medical industry's got all of our kind of worst interests at heart, that I'm going to give some positives around medicine. So I've got a few updates, and one of them, the first one, is actually about grey hair. So a study by researchers at New York University's Langone Health, which I'm probably pronounced wrong, found that melanocyte stem cells, MSSCs, in mice lose their ability to migrate and mature as hair ages. This immobility prevents the cells from producing pigment, which leads to grey hair. And the researchers believe that if these stuck cells can be reactivated, it may be possible to reverse the greying process in humans as well. So this is something that I should just say, they've used AI to basically identify the reason why hair is turning grey. And they apparently think that they can use this to potentially reverse the greying of hair process. Unfortunately, they are not able to do anything against balding. So for most people, it's pretty limited. So
well, hopefully that's next. I think it's pronounced melanocyte as well. I'm not sure. As in melanocyte.
Well, the way you said it sounds like you know. So I'll go with what you said.
I'm just making stuff up now.
Researchers at the Harvard University.
Yeah.
Harvard.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Harvard.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Maybe Harvard could sound right. Harvard. Harvard. I haven't heard of it, but the Harvard University have developed an AI model called TXGNN, which identifies existing drugs that can be repurposed for over 17,000 rare diseases. I don't have a list of the diseases, otherwise it would be a long episode, but the model aims to expedite the discovery of therapies for conditions that currently lack effective treatments, potentially addressing significant health issues. So they've done fuck all to date, but they've identified something that might help repurpose existing drugs. I mean, I would say there's a lot of existing drugs that have been repurposed for COVID, but unfortunately, certain companies have not allowed that to be pursued much further. So let's see if this is another one that gets held up by Big Pharma. I said I wouldn't talk about Big Pharma, didn't I? But I've slipped there. I've managed to get it in just because I always want to. Okay, another one. A study in the UK has found that AI can accurately predict which patients require ambulance transport to hospitals, achieving correct predictions of 80%. It doesn't sound that great to me, 80%. I would say 80% means 20% where they've got it wrong. But they can use this potentially to optimize emergency services and improve patient outcomes. For those that don't know, so for various reasons, the pandemic, economic pressures, increased ages, etc., ambulances are under a lot of pressure. And so the reason this would be so great is this is not just the UK, I know it's the case in Australia, in the US, but I'm obviously sort of more aware of the UK. This would potentially mean that they could identify better which patients actually require the ambulance transport. We've seen some kind of heartbreaking stories in the last few years of people waiting, having a cardiac arrest and waiting, 50 minutes for an ambulance, or people waiting even hours for ambulances. So, this could potentially have a real, genuine benefit. And then this is one I like. The only problem with this one is I tried to look at things that had happened in the last month because I thought, this is a monthly roundup. This was from an article in the last month, but I've got a feeling this might have actually happened, maybe a few months previous. But using AI, researchers have found a new type of antibiotic that works against a severe drug-resistant bacteria. So I should say here, this is not like a, broad-spectrum antibiotic. This is something very specific. I'm going to try and read this, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it. Acinetobacter baumannii is a nosocomial, gram-negative pathogen that often displays multi-drug resistance. However, this new antibiotic could, so actually it doesn't even say it necessarily could prove to be able to kill this drug-resistant bacteria. So actually those medical updates, with the exception of one of them, they're all kind of bollocks, to be honest, aren't they? They're all things that might have some use, and maybe one day in the future they might be able to use to treat some disease, but actually they're actually pretty rubbish at the moment.
Yeah, it feels like Anchorman or something.
Well, it feels like I'm Anchorman, right?
Yeah, like you're just reading
I'm
this
Ron
for the first
Burgundy.
time.
I am reading it for the first time. We said in the last one we don't rehearse these episodes, which will be a shock to a lot of our listeners.
No, perhaps we should. So I've got a study here about ChatGPT citations. The gist of it is they're a load of rubbish.
Another exciting one from you then.
Yeah, I know. I've gone for all the best topics today. But yeah, so the Tau Center for Digital Journalism took a look at AI chatbots and how they produce citations or sources for publishers' content. And it makes for concerning reading, is what the article says. So for those of you that don't know, ChatGPT recently added search. So I think it's ChatGPT Search, which is supposed to compete with the likes of Google and stuff like that. Now, one of the common problems with large language models is that they can hallucinate. If they don't know the answer to something, they'll sort of make something up, or maybe not entirely make something up, but get something that's slightly wrong. So yeah, this Center for Digital Journalism, they basically took a bunch of quotes from stories from different publishers, and with this as well, like different publishers have signed up to actually have agreements with ChatGPT, like with licensing deals and things like that. So it is a bit complicated. But you have got a couple of examples, so here, the New York Times, which is currently suing OpenAI in a copyright claim, Washington Post, which is unaffiliated with GPT, and the Financial Times were some of the examples of things they searched for stories that had shown up in these publications. The Financial Times actually does have a licensing deal with ChatGPT, so it's all a bit complicated. They chose quotes that, if pasted into Google or Bing, would return the source article among the top 3 results, and evaluated whether OpenAI's new search tool, so this is the latest search, OpenAI GPT search basically, would correctly identify the article that was the source of the quote. Okay, what they found was not good for news publishers. Though OpenAI emphasizes its ability to provide users timely answers with links to relevant web sources, the company makes no explicit commitment to ensuring the accuracy of those citations. Brilliant. It's a notable omission for publishers who expect their content to be referenced and represented faithfully. The tests found that no publisher, regardless of degree of affiliation with OpenAI, was spared from inaccurate representations of its content within ChatGPT. So basically, there was a whole bunch of responses from GPT where it basically either sometimes gave correct citations, but also citations that were completely wrong and other stuff that fell in between. They say that ultimately their conclusion is that ChatGPT citations appear to be an unreliable mixed bag. They found very few instances where the chatbot didn't. They also found very few instances where the chatbot didn't project total confidence in its wrong answers. So this is another thing that we've seen from these large language models like ChatGPT, where they will very confidently answer questions. And obviously in the case of this article and this research, they've demonstrated that it's making stuff up, and also basically saying that it's completely true. They found that the bot rarely fessed up to being able to produce an answer, rarely actually said that it couldn't produce an answer. And it basically was really assertive in what it was saying, whether it was incorrect or correct. And so it wouldn't say things like it appears or it's possible or it might. It wouldn't say that it couldn't find the exact article. Yeah, so the article goes on to say, in total, ChatGPT returned partially or entirely incorrect responses on 153 occasions, and out of those 153 occasions, it only acknowledged an inability to accurately respond to a query 7 times. Obviously not very much. Only in those 7 outputs did it say things like it appears, or it's possible, or it might, or it couldn't locate the exact article. So effectively what it did was just hallucinate. Without looking into all the detail behind the responses it gave, it might have been a mixture of kind of correct responses or a bit of a jumble. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a search tool. And so it's not supposed to be just making stuff up, like a large language model does. And not that they always make stuff up. They are, they're quite accurate with a lot of the things they say. But this is where you're actually trying to research something and you want sources. And so your traditional search engines would almost always give you first of all, give you links to whatever it is you're searching for. Usually they'd have it in this case, they would have it in the top 3 results every time. And then you'd be able to go and look into that for yourself. What they're saying is, using ChatGPT, whether it gives the right or the wrong output, it's not citing things correctly. It won't admit that it can't find the information most of the time, like 95% of the time by the sounds of it. And then it doesn't actually give you the correct links either. So I think as a search tool, it sounds like GPT has a little way to go.
I found, I was just searching while you were doing that, because I keep talking about Gary Marcus, but all this stuff kind of reminds me of things, because I think he's just at the moment, he's kind of bang on with a lot of what he said. But he was talking about ChatGPT and saying, so ChatGPT has no real relationship with the truth. This was based on, I think, 3.5 and 4, so it was a little bit ago. But this is the bit that I thought was really good. Everything it produces sounds plausible, but it doesn't always know the connections between the things that it's putting together. You can't say at the beginning of a ChatGPT session and expect it to work, please only say true statements in what follows. It just won't be able to respect it. It doesn't understand what you mean by only true things, and it can't constrain itself to only say true things. And I think that's the point. It's not able to. It's better. The reasoning model is better. But I think one really interesting thing, to go back to kind of Claude again, sometimes now in the latest update of Claude is when you ask it something, it says, if I try and answer this, I think I might hallucinate. Mm-hmm. Which is really cool that it gives you that warning. You know, it's obviously not self-awareness, it's just a plugin that they've put in that gets it to tell you, but it's telling you that it might hallucinate. Now, okay, the reasoning model 01 of ChatGPT is more advanced than Claude in that sense, that it has those reasoning steps, but it should stand to reason that it still hallucinates, because ultimately if it can't find an answer, it's set up in such a way that it tries to answer everything.
It's the most, in a way, one of the best things about this is it's such a human-like quality.
Bullshit. Didn't we do a song, ChatGPT is bullshit, on one of the episodes? I mean, we were ahead of the curve on this.
I think we did hard versus soft bullshit. That's
exactly what the song was, yeah.
But yeah, like this is something that humans do, right? We think we know the answer to something, or we have an opinion on something, and that jades our answer. And so we'll maybe confidently give an answer, but it's pretty dangerous with these language. I think it's more dangerous with these language models because, everyone's chatting to them all the time. People are using them people are relying on them. And I guess there's a bit of a human instinct, which is that, oh, well, the computer said it, so it must be true. I feel like a little bit to a certain extent, which is dangerous in the first instance. We've talked about critical thinking before, but continue to apply your critical thinking to anything that ChatGPT says or any other LLM.
So the last item on this week's or this month's update. So there is a deepfake detection browser that has been designed, and one of the cool things is it's been designed in the UK because we don't have a sort of domestic large language model in the UK. We don't really have much in terms of developments, although obviously DeepMind was originally a UK company. But this browser sounds pretty cool. So it's a UK startup called Surf Security, and their aim is to combat the growing threat of deepfakes, which are increasingly being used for fraud and misinformation. So this tool, which is touted as the world's first deepfake detecting browser, is designed to identify AI-generated audio and video with remarkable accuracy, currently up to 98%. I mean, that sounds good, although I'd like to think I would get close to 98% myself. But pretty good, and it's still a work in progress on deepfakes, apparently. Allowing users to discern, AI-generated audio and video, so it doesn't say deepfakes. It's able to identify on 98%. So I think this is across the board, but obviously with some of them, if they're not deepfakes, it would be identifying them that they're not a deepfake. But it allows users to discern whether they're interacting with a real person or an imitation. So I'll just give you these are the key features. So I should say this is something that is not, or the full version of it is expected to be released last year. So I think it's something in beta at the moment, but this is what they talk about, the key features. So neural network technology, the browser employs advanced military-grade neural network technology. So I didn't know they were using large language models and neural networks in the military. It's quite shocking.
What a surprise.
Yeah, specifically utilizing what they call state space models, which I've no idea what that means. But their approach of the browser, it analyzes audio frames for inconsistencies, effectively detects deepfake content with various languages and different accents. Speed and efficiency, the detection process is incredibly swift, with the system capable of identifying deepfake audio in under 2 seconds. And this is obviously critical in scenarios where you need to make sure you're getting correct sort of timely information. It can be used across various online platforms, including communication with software like WhatsApp, Slack, Zoom, Google Meet. So you simply press a button to verify the authenticity of audio, whether recorded or live. It doesn't say how it does it. So on the audio thing, I'm not as convinced as on video. And then future enhancement, they're looking to expand to integrate AI image detection into the browser toolkit, further enhancing its utility in identifying manipulated media. So it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. It sounds like something that we're in desperate need of as well. I think on the...
My first question is who controls it? Because it's the same argument as disinformation, misinformation. Who decides it? Disinformation, misinformation. You know, is it run by left-wing media or is it run by the far right? I mean, that could be a problem. But let's work on the basis this startup has all of our best interests at heart. I think this is a really, really positive thing. I look forward to seeing this.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, the 98% thing, you jokingly said, I think I could detect 98%.
I was joking, I can't.
Yeah, I think the thing with that is, in a sort of, what's the word, like an environment, if you said to me, like, there's these AI image sites where you can compare AI images and real images and you have to, like, guess which is which. In that situation, like, I can quite often guess them most of the time. I know a few tricks on how to do that around contrast and a few other things, but even that, like, quite a lot of people find that difficult, even when you know what you're looking for. I think the challenge around deepfakes is, like, half the time it's going to be, you know, it's just going to be like a Facebook pop-up or a YouTube ad or whatever it is. Like,
sure.
You don't know that.
But I guess in those cases, do you really care? Like, when you're thinking about deepfakes, I'm thinking here about things which are dangerous and going to manipulate or mislead you.
Yeah.
That marketing stuff it doesn't matter if it's a deep fake, you know, maybe I'm more likely to buy it because it's got someone from, you know, blue pink in the video, Blackpink. It shows how cool I am in the video. Or, you know, or other really cool people like
Bob Dylan,
Jeremy Beadle or whoever else the kids are into
Jeremy
these
Beadle.
days.
Where's that a reference from?
Is that not what
Annika Rice
kids are into these days? My daughter's a big Jeremy Beadle fan.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber. Maybe I'm thinking of Justin Bieber.
I think no.
I wasn't. I was thinking of Jeremy Beadle.
I think Justin Bieber's even out of date. A reference now.
Well, Justin Bieber now.
Is he back in?
No, he's back, but he's he's got a Bell's palsy caused by long COVID, so I don't think he can sing properly.
Has he?
Yeah, but he sings. He's been singing some Christian songs recently, so maybe he's getting better. So shout out to
Justin Bieber,
JB. And Jeremy Beadle, the real JB.
On this topic, quite like, I just found a random Reddit post, which was the gist of it was, the gist of the comments on it were that captures are soon going to have to just become memes because AI can't figure out memes, and captures are getting pretty ridiculous. And
I had one the other day, and it was click on the item that can be folded, right? And there was an image of 2 pandas, 2 lions, and a T-shirt.
Did you get it right?
I got it right, but it took me 5 efforts because there were 2 pandas and 2 lions. I'm a big guy. I can fold a fucking panda.
You can fold a panda. I quite look forward to the day where captures just become memes. Maybe we should invent that.
Captures as memes.
Meme captures. The problem is, like, I'm not sure everyone would.
Do you think AI can just do, like, nonsense? Because that's something that we can still do pretty well. I mean, us in particular.
What absolute
gibberish, just verbal diarrhea. If the AI can't engage in a kind of verbal diarrhea conversation, then it's an AI.
Yeah, coming next year, gibberish GPT.
I just finish off with on the kind of, this is not quite deepfakes, but it's very similar. Something I saw the other day that I thought was really cool was it's an AI granny who basically answers AI prank phone call, not prank phone calls, AI kind of AI phishing phone calls, like the marketing calls. And this AI granny can then engage for like an hour and keep the AI on the phone having a conversation with it. I don't know if it can go more than an hour, or if after an hour it cuts
so
out.
not necessarily keeping a prankster on the phone.
No, it's based on the fact that there are all these AI calls, right? Which are now sent out where an AI calls and just tries to sell something to you. But obviously, if you've got a real prankster, then once you start talking nonsense, it's like, okay, I'll put the phone down. But it somehow is able to keep engaging with the algorithm of the AI, so that the AI that is calling you with it's not a prank call, but they're just trying to sell you something.
But it gets tied up.
It just kind of ties it up for like an hour. And the image I saw was like an old lady with glasses, but it's the persona that it's set is an AI granny, which is designed to kind of combat these kind of AI. Like I said, they're not prank calls, but these kind of AI phishing calls or whatever. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. It's obviously not deep fakes, but it's a way of countering and battling it. So we've had, 2 examples here of tools that are coming out to try and counter some of the kind of negative imminent uses of AI. So I thought that was pretty good.
I am definitely going to try AI Granny out. I don't answer any of my phone calls anyway because I live in China.
Yeah, you're going to try AI Granny out.
But I'll try AI Granny.
I'd like an AI Granny.
I'm going to try it out on you next time you phone me.
I've never called you.
That's true.
Well, I think that's probably a good point to end this episode on. So, yeah, thanks for listening.
I like your socks, by the way.
So we should be back next week with another China-themed episode. It might be part 2 of the interview we did with Christy Loke. It might be another China one that we're recording, or it might be one on military uses of AI, which is absolutely nothing to do with China. But keep listening, subscribe, send us some feedback, because we really could do with that, and listen to Jimmy's song.
Bye.
Archie Knox.
Rhythm of machines. Rhythm of machines.